In 74 BCE, the greatest empire to ever exist, the Roman Empire, was shaken to its core by a civil war that they could never have expected. What began as a desperate escape from a couple of gladiators slowly escalated into a full war, with the full might of the Roman army being marshaled, and 70,000 to 120,000 slaves and peasants engaging in full-scale ancient warfare. During the war, figures like Spartacus fought against legendary generals such as Lucius Crassus and Pompey the Great. Despite the revolt eventually being crushed, the shockwaves caused by this war changed the whole class system of Europe, creating ethical discussions about the owning of slaves. Throughout the 4 years of battle, the extent of the Roman military was tested. The war claimed tens of thousands of lives on both sides of the conflict, with the Roman government rethinking how it should treat the enslaved masses that served as the labor that powered their society. Today, I will be bringing you through the complete 4 years of the Civil War, the information it has given modern-day historians, as well as the change in the treatment of slaves in Europe. Before we can go through the revolution itself, we must understand the life of a slave in ancient times. Whether you were male, female, or even a child, your life would have no meaning other than being a way for your owner to complete work. No rights, no pay, and no future. Their days started at the crack of dawn, with a measly breakfast of cheap porridge or bread. For the rest of the day, slaves would labor away, doing any tasks needed such as running errands and cleaning the house. In households with many slaves, there would be cramped, uncomfortable rooms. Slaves would do this every day for the rest of their lives, and when they could no longer work, they would be sold. Furthermore, the second class of people who revolted were the gladiators, whose lives were not much better. Gladiators usually consisted of prisoners of war or deserters. Gladiators lived similar to soldiers, where they would all live together in a barracks, waking up at the crack of dawn. As they were trained to fight, they were given meat porridges or saltine crackers to give them energy. They trained all day or on special occasions would fight in the Colosseums. Gladiators would fight against each other or wild animals, with victory sometimes even meaning freedom. The gladiators existed to provide entertainment to the Roman public, and thus they were oppressed and treated as subhuman. The revolution began in a gladiator school in Aludus, located in ancient Capua, near the massive amphitheater of Capua, now Santa Maria Capua Vetere, Italy, where historians speculate he was sent to because of desertion from the Roman army. Living like this made him realize how terrible the lower class really lived, which is why he rallied the gladiators to rise up against their captors. Spartacus and his two generals, Crixus and Oenomaus, and about 70 to 80 gladiators escaped from the gladiator school in Capua, run by Lentulus Potitus. The rebels move on foot and flee to Mount Vesuvius to set up a defensive camp, underestimating the gladiators. Rome sends a small militia force led by Praetor Gaius Claudius Glaber, who tries to starve out the rebels by establishing blockades all around the mountains. The rebels scaled down a steep cliff using rope and defeated Glaber's forces by attacking them from behind. Spartacus kept moving north towards the Alps to escape, where he freed slaves, peasants, and after a few weeks, Praetor Publius Varnius is sent to deal with them, where the rebels' guerrilla tactics proved to be too much for his army, wiping out the whole force, with Varnius barely escaping. During this time, the rebellion employed ancient guerrilla tactics such as swift raids, ambushes, and using environmental cover, such as Mount Vesuvius. By the end of 73 BCE, Spartacus had already amassed thousands of followers. At the start of this year, Spartacus had already gathered 40,000 to 70,000 soldiers, which caused him to split the army between Spartacus and his most trusted general, Crixus. After splitting, they went through the countryside, plundering wealthy estates, taking out any Roman units along the way. Although they were relatively immaterial to the Roman Senate, the Roman Senate sent Lucius Julius Publicia and Gnaeus Cornelius Lentulus Claudianus with full consular armies. Since the rebel forces were split up, engaging in a full-scale conflict would make victory impossible, so when Julius confronts Crixus' army near Mount Garganus, Crixus and his whole force is wiped out. In honor of Crixus, Spartacus creates mock gladiator battles out of prisoners of war. Spartacus continues using his guerrilla tactics and isolates the two consuls, taking them out separately, continuing to push towards the Alps. Spartacus' initial plan was to free his whole army by escaping through the Alps and out of Roman territory, but instead he turned back down south, with some speculating they wanted more loot. The Senate decides to appoint Marcus Linucius Crassus as commander, a wealthy and influential figure in Roman politics. Crassus's first act as the commander was to inflict harsh disciplinary actions, using decimation to kill 1/10 of every legion, inflicting fear and pressure on soldiers. Crassus, with his army of around 50,000, took out rebel detachments and drove Spartacus's main army down into the southern coast of Italy. Spartacus, in a desperate plan to escape, hired pirates to ferry his troops across the bridge, but the pirates betrayed them and left them stranded. Praetor Erastus of the Roman army builds a fortification line across the southern line, trapping Spartacus's army, and waits for Crassus's army to arrive. The rebels split into groups, with some remaining to fight alongside Spartacus and some deciding to flee, diminishing the rebels' numbers. The rebels then split into 3 separate detachments, 2 of which were quickly destroyed by Crassus, as the smooth terrain of the south was extremely advantageous for the Roman legions. The final encounter happened near Lusciana, next to the Siller River, where Spartacus led his final armies into battle against the vast Roman armies. In defiance, before the battle, Spartacus killed his own horse, telling his men that he would rather die going into battle with his army than fleeing on his horse, inspiring his generals to kill their horses as well. Ultimately, Spartacus's army was massacred, leaving no survivors, with many rebels and Spartacus himself being nailed onto a cross and placed on the riverbank. Despite the revolt being unsuccessful, it did actually achieve something on a global scale. Since ancient Europe was built on slavery, this revolution gave many nations a warning of what could happen if they continued to oppress the lower classes. This led to governmental changes, and although the slaves and gladiators were not free, this revolution served as the first step into a future that could be for everyone. Spartacus, although not achieving his goal, served as a beacon of hope across Europe for the oppressed. This conflict also provides many insights into Rome itself, especially its military tactics and way of life. Throughout the conflict, the Romans usually lost when the rebels utilized hit-and-run tactics, which is how we know that the Roman legionary carried heavy weaponry with bags containing rations and equipment such as maps. We also know the harsh life of being a Roman soldier, seen when Crassus first took over the army. Through this revolt, we could also see how much the Romans relied on slavery and how much this revolt affected the normal citizen. As the philosopher Epictetus, a former slave, once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself."